The following is meant for entertainment and educational purposes. It is not meant to establish a doctor-patient relationship. Please consult your mental health provider for your mental health needs. Hello, welcome to Chez Eric, my home, where we talk about psychiatry and religion with the focus on how to apply it to your life. And today, I wanted to continue the lecture series with William James on Lecture 3 with Varieties of Religious Experience. And I hope you're enjoying it so far. This Lecture 3 is going to be William James talking about the realities. It's titled The Realities of the Unseen. So he's really trying to help us understand, how do we talk about things that we can't see? How do we talk about things that we can't fully sense with our senses and touch and stuff like that? So he goes into depth about that, and it's a pretty important topic. The first thing that William James talks about when it comes to realities of the unseen is this idea of objects of our consciousness. And when I first saw this term, objects of our consciousness, I was thinking to myself, oh, this reminds me of what I learned in medical school about object relations theory and objects in general. And personally, I hated the word object. It was so confusing. I didn't know why I was called an object. Why are we calling it an object? How are we doing these objects? What is this in the brain? Whatever. It's very, very confusing. But over time, I eventually got an idea of how it worked and what it was doing. So I'll try to explain it here. Object relations theory was developed in 1917 by a Hungarian psychoanalyst, I think Ferenczi, I think that's how you pronounce his name. And it was 1917, but William James died in 1910. So when William James talks about objects of our consciousness, I'm not sure he's talking about objects relation theory, but I think they're kind of related. I'm not exactly sure. But an object is kind of like an idea that you have in your mind that your mind just uses repeatedly in different ways. For example, let's say you have an idea of your mother in your mind, and it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. You have an idea of a mother in your mind, such that when you meet someone else that's similar to your mother, or you have the idea of mother, it brings out all of these emotions and all these concepts that comes with your mother that you just kind of place onto it. So if your mother was really nice and kind, and you see someone else that reminds you of your mother, you might be very nice to them as if they were your own mother, and feel certain things as if that person were your own mother. That would be a transference, and that's the idea of the object relations theory. However, William James isn't using that form of the word object. He's actually talking about something else. William James is talking just about objects of our consciousness, meaning our attitudes, our moral and practical and emotional ideas. These things are objects of our consciousness. And he kind of goes to talk about that objects of our consciousness, the things that our consciousness cares about, can come from our senses. It can come from an idea. It's meant to elicit a reaction of some sort. And these reactions can be very, very strong, right? So let me give a very benign example and then maybe a more serious example. So let's say you have a cake, right? You see this cake, you sense this cake, you smell the cake, you taste the cake, you eat the cake. This cake, this idea of a cake is in your mind as an object of your consciousness because you're awake. You're awake, you see the cake, you're eating the cake, you're experiencing the cake. And it's causing you to want to eat the cake, and it's creating a reaction to this cake. So the cake is an object in your mind. So this is something that's fairly concrete. But let's get into something that's a little bit less concrete. Let's talk about, let's say, breaking up with somebody, all right? Let's say you had a really good relationship and all of a sudden it ended and you feel really bad. The idea of a relationship, the good parts about it, the parts that you miss, that you enjoyed, but all the parts that you hate, they exist as objects of our consciousness. They're also very abstract. And even though it's not real, like a cake, you can't feel this relationship, you can't touch it, right? It's still something that evokes a reaction from us, and it causes us a significant emotional feeling, and it is kind of very, very important. It's an important concept to us. So the thing is that the reason why William James wants to talk about objects of our consciousness is because he wants to point out that religion or religious things, or when it comes to the religious experience, usually deals with objects that aren't sensed by our senses, by our sense of taste, touch, smell. What are the other ones? Taste, touch, smell, hearing, seeing. Taste, touch, smell. Yeah, that's right. Forgot my Sesame Street logic, or Sesame Street lessons. I should go back to Sesame Street. But we don't sense religion in the same way that we sense the cake example. And he then goes on to kind of compare what his talk about religion to what Kant, a very famous philosopher, would say and criticize. Kant would say the only things that matter, I think that he would say this is me learning about Kant through William James, that the only things that matter are things that we could sense, touch, and feel. Everything else after that is some abstraction that we can't tell is reality. So if you don't sense it, you don't touch it, you don't feel it, you don't see it, you don't hear it, it's not something that matters. However, William James kind of fights back or like argues back, saying it's not so much that these things don't exist because we can't touch or feel them or see them or hear them. These religious objects of our consciousness, God, the soul, immortality, they're really important because they elicit a reaction from us. They actually affect our behavior. Our understanding, our belief of God affects the way we do things. Our understanding and belief of whether we're going to go to hell affects us, very greatly. Our belief of what if we do good things, we'll go to heaven. Right? That affects why we do good things, if that's the logic that we have. And even though we can't touch or sense or feel these objects of our consciousness when it comes to religious things, it doesn't mean that we should dispel them and dismiss them as unnecessary or stupid or useless. He says because they do have the ability to change our behavior, really influence what we do and who we are as a result. So that's William James's sort of big takeaway about this idea of objects of our consciousness. So what do you think? Do you think that just because we can't touch, feel, or see certain, like the soul or God, that they're things that you should just throw out? A lot of atheists believe that, and for reasonable reasons. Or do you feel that you agree with William James that when you have things that you can't touch and feel, they still can be very important to us and worth investigating because they influence who we are? Let me know your comments below, and I will go with part 2 next time. Oh, like and subscribe. Did I say like and subscribe? Like and subscribe. See you later. Bye. So there are going to be some minor delays with the book. I originally wanted it out in July 2020, but it'll probably have to come out in 2021. It's a bit of a long story, and I'll explain in a future heart-to-heart. But in the meantime, I want to thank you so much for your support. This YouTube thing is really actually kind of fun, if I really think about it, making videos and writing books. So I'm enjoying the ride. I hope you're enjoying the ride too. I'll see you later.